What does a world beyond cannabis regulation look like? There's no single, simple answer to this question, and the timelines for this world remain unclear. But we know it's approaching in some form, and the answers to this question will redefine multiple industries. Let's take a closer look. Realistically, there will always be some level of regulation around the cannabis plant. But let's explore an alternate universe where all variations and combinations of cannabis products can be found in traditional retail, bars and restaurants, stadiums and arenas, moving freely across state and international lines. We'll call this the post-regulatory world, and it has been the one most envisioned since global movements towards cannabis legalization began. But it has been remarkably elusive in the first decade of legalization's existence. To properly explore how this may develop, let's start with a brief history of cannabis legalization in the United States. While various structures for regulated medical use existed for more than a decade prior, Colorado and Washington were the first states in the Union to legalize recreational use of cannabis in 2012, followed by Alaska and Oregon in 2014, and California and Maine in 2016. As of October 2024, 24 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized cannabis for recreational use, and 38 states and Washington, D.C. allow for use of cannabis for medical purposes through comprehensive programs. But the elephant in the room from the beginning has been cannabis's illegal status at the federal level. And it's not just illegal. Cannabis is scheduled as a Schedule I drug under the Controlled Substances Act, the same category as heroin and fentanyl. Believe it or not, cocaine is classified at the lesser Schedule II level. Importantly, the Schedule II classification at least specifies that, while the substance has a high potential for abuse, it also has accepted medical uses for treatment, in this case as a topical local anesthetic. And this gets to one of the biggest drags cannabis has faced at a fundamental level. Schedule I drugs under the Controlled Substances Act are defined as, quote, drugs with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. This classification has effectively prevented most cannabis research of any kind from taking place and blocking scientifically informed knowledge of the uses of cannabis for anxiety, appetite stimulus and suppression, sleep assistance, fibromyalgia, and the myriad of other symptoms for which users turn to cannabis. This legal block is further exacerbated by the status of the industry at the state level. While you can find varying conditions in different states, and as demand continues to grow and new markets continue to open, we're seeing cannabis companies throttled by regulations that seem designed to punish the very groups most focused on compliance. Burdened by heavy regulations, heavy taxes, and virtually no effort by regulators to marginalize or eliminate the black market, fully compliant companies that are actually making money are few and far between. Add to this the crushing burden of the federal 280E tax code, forbidding businesses from deducting otherwise ordinary business expenses because the activity is associated with the, quote, trafficking of Schedule I or Schedule II substances, and the full blocks on interstate and international commerce, and you have a scenario where very few small and mid-sized players are seeing a path to survival. But then, in 2024, a crack of light. In May, the Department of Justice, responding to a request from the Department of Health and Human Services, proposed to transfer marijuana from Schedule I of the Controlled Substances Act to Schedule III of the CSA. This movement is based on the HHS's position that marijuana has currently accepted medical uses, and that marijuana's abuse potential and level of physical and psychological dependence is less than substances classified in Schedule I. While the overall impact of rescheduling to Schedule III remains unknown, it does address several of the elements that have dragged down the regulated cannabis industry. Elimination of the burdensome 280E tax code, broad opening of research opportunities for the plant and its uses, loosening of banking restrictions on cannabis companies which, independent of scheduling, have been stuck in political limbo for years, and a general loosening of federal regulations which most view as a positive for the industry. As of the making of this video, the shift to Schedule 3 is not complete and, as you might imagine, there are forces pushing against the change. Given the overwhelming support for legalization by the American people, continued resistance to such changes can only be described as politically motivated. While this resistance will not disappear, it will continue to decline as attitudes change and younger generations move into power. So we are seeing movement towards the post-regulatory world, probably more accurately described as a lightly regulated world. But timelines are unclear, and for the foreseeable future, regulated cannabis companies will continue to operate under uncertain conditions and burdensome regulations that greatly handicap the chances of success. But in the meantime, demand for cannabis products continues to grow, and the market continues to expand as new states come online. Where is this all going? As we look for clues and continue to navigate regulatory uncertainty, have any products broken through in traditional retail channels? The short answer is not legally. No true cannabis product can be legally sold outside of a licensed dispensary. While some dispensaries offer online sales, these only apply to pickup or delivery, and under no circumstances can a regulated cannabis product cross state lines. So what are all the THC gummy, vape, and other products you're seeing online and in smoke shops, which should not technically be selling cannabis products? Well, this is where it gets interesting and, believe it or not, even more complicated. Enter the Farm Bill of 2018 and the distinction between cannabis and hemp. The Farm Bill is a package of legislation that covers a breadth of key agricultural topics. Originally enacted in the 1930s, the Farm Bill of 2018, or technically the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, is unique in its legalization of hemp production and distribution under federal law, up to and including interstate transfer of hemp products for commercial or other purposes. While the intent of this hemp regulation was primarily focused on important industrial applications of hemp, such as textiles, paper, and concrete, an interesting detail regarding the definition of hemp related to its THC content has sparked a rather controversial revolution in the broader cannabis space. The 2018 Farm Bill defines hemp, Cannabis sativa L, as, quote, any part of that plant, including the seeds thereof, and all derivatives, extracts, cannabinoids, isomers, acids, salts, and salts of isomers, with no more than a 0.3% concentration of THC by dry weight. This is rather dense language which, unsurprisingly, has led to differing interpretations of its meaning. One reading of this language, perhaps the author's intended reading, is that hemp contains insignificant trace amounts of THC. Another reading of this language, however, has created a seismic shift in the industry. Put simply, this language legalizes THC and, effectively, cannabis at the federal level. You see, cannabis and hemp are the same plant, with the only strict difference, per the Farm Bill, being THC content. But while 0.3% concentration of THC by dry weight may seem like a meaningless amount and is extremely low compared to cannabis, enough hemp raw material can provide as much THC as may be needed for any application. Critically, while the Farm Bill defines the level of THC that constitutes hemp, it does not address with any clarity how much hemp-derived THC can be used in products. So you can begin to see the back door that has been created by the Farm Bill. Will this door remain open or slam shut? The Farm Bill is regularly scheduled to be updated every 5 years, with the most recent update due in 2023. This deadline was missed, and with complicated and often contentious update discussions continuing, The next update is not expected until 2025 at the earliest. While no one will be surprised by a lack of movement in Washington, D.C. on any topic, this next Farm Bill update will go a long way towards defining the landscape of hemp-based products in the marketplace, and the unique circumstances related to the definition of hemp solely based on THC content that has created both opportunity and chaos. We can see that much of the brain damage related to cannabis legalization has been burned down to a single cannabinoid, THC. THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol, is the cannabinoid that creates the psychoactive effect. It's what makes you high. Setting aside the gross simplification of the effects of the plant and its various combinations, the focus on specifically regulating THC has opened a door to federally legal THC products in certain doses, and it may have opened a Pandora's box that can't be closed. While innumerable questions remain unanswered, the results of the recent U.S. presidential election may finally present the opportunity for legitimate and definitive movement towards the post-regulatory world that the industry has been waiting for. In our next segment, we'll explore what this promised land might look like from the consumer perspective. Let us know your thoughts on how state and federal regulations are going to develop, and let's continue to take a closer look.